reading should be fun, but sometimes it just isn't. So anytime that we can make that required reading or that reading that just really is not super fun better, those are experiences that I really like to have while reading. Hello and welcome back to my channel. It is June and May seemed like it lasted for a very long time, yet went by kind of quickly, if that's even possible. I had so many things that I wanted to accomplish in May, and I did some of those things. I didn't do a lot of those things, but I ended up having a pretty productive May, and I hope you did as well. With all the time at home that most of us are spending, it's easy to relax a little bit too much, but it's also a good time to get those things done that have been on a to-do list forever. So organizing my house was one of the big things for me. Leave a comment down below on what you've been doing to occupy your time lately. So now that May has wrapped up, I wanted to share with you the books that I completed as part of the Spark Joy May Readathon. And I posted a video about how excited I was about this little it was not a challenge because it was supposed to just be a fun celebration of reading, and that's what it was. So it was a celebration of doing the things that we as book lovers like to do, and that is be involved in a new story. And so I have my May picks for you. So first, for a book that kind of doubled up for the prompts, a book with a yellow cover and a book about someone going on an adventure, is The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane by DiCamillo. Now, this book is about a little rabbit who goes on a quite unexpected adventure, and all of his friends, I'll call them, all of the people that he comes in contact with. The thing that is so intriguing to me about this book is that the little rabbit, Edward Tulane, is kind of like an anti-hero. He, at the beginning of the book, he does not know how to love. Even though the little girl who owns him loves Edward so deeply, Edward doesn't really love her. It's about his little journey to learning how to love. And this did not make me cry, but it came very close, and I gave it 5 stars. Another children's book that I was able to pick up and read fulfilled the prompt of a book with stars on the cover. It actually has star in the title. It's called Stella by Starlight by Sharon M. Draper, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I will post a more detailed review, and you can read my review on Goodreads if you want more details. But I thought this book would be so great in any middle grades classroom. It tells the story of Stella and how Stella sees things like prejudice and blatant racism in her town. It's just very heart-wrenching because she's so young, but she is just as affected by the racism in her town and the Jim Crow laws that prevent her parents from voting. Even though she's young, she experiences that on the same emotional level as her parents do. And I just think this is a fantastic book to incorporate into not only English curriculum, but it would be a fantastic book to study in a unit in social studies or history, creative writing. It would be awesome because Stella is not a good writer, but she has fantastic ideas. So even though she thinks she can't write, her teacher encourages her to try anyway. So throughout the book, Sharon M. Draper gives these great little snippets of Stella's own writing as she becomes a better writer and more confident in her stories that she wants to tell. So I think that would just be a great model for students who struggle in creative writing classes. An arc that I was able to read through NetGalley was called X Marks the Spot by S.E. Anderson. Now, this is a really great young adult travel novel. It's about a girl who travels really without wanting to go visit her grandmother in France after her mother was seriously injured in a car accident and needs time to go through physical therapy and recover. And I thought the premise of the novel was really intriguing. The way Anderson describes France, which is really interesting because she has lived in France for a good bit of time. The way that she describes the lavender fields and all of that, it really paints a vivid picture of France and makes me want to go there. I also thought that a really cool part of the book was the ability that Anderson had to weave just really authentic French dialogue that I could not pronounce at all. So I thought because of that, it would be such a great addition in a French classroom, in a foreign language French classroom, because it would give students a really fun narrative to get involved in. And if they have just a basic knowledge of the language, I think it would be really cool for them to see those words in really authentic situations and within conversations between characters in the book. I think that would be a really great supplemental idea because it would get away from a textbook and give the students a narrative to enjoy instead. The book that received 5 stars that I have probably thought about every day since I read it is called Miss Benson's Beetle, and it has already been released in the UK and is almost at its release in the United States, and it was wonderful. It's by Rachel Joyce, and I can't say enough good things about this book. It is a historical fiction novel. It is set right after World War II, which I think is really intriguing because not only does it focus on women in this book and the after effects of the war, but it does indeed focus on the aftermath instead of the action in the war. And I think that's very important. There is a lot of talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, about the men and the women whose lives were completely shattered and they had to rebuild. All of those things are conveyed through a very raw lens, but Rachel Joyce is able to weave so much humor in this book. It just feels, it really was a book that sparked joy while reading it. In my Goodreads review, I mentioned that it just felt like a pop-up novel, a pop-up book for kids, that these characters, especially the main characters, they just popped out of the story and they became your friends, which it sounds very silly, but it's true. It's a story about friendship, a friendship that occurs when Miss Benson needs someone to travel across the world with her to find a rare, never before seen beetle that she wants to be the first to find. And she meets a very, very fiery bombshell blonde who goes on this crazy adventure, and they become the best of friends, and it's so touching and amazing, and you need to read it. A book that I am almost done with is Something Needs to Change by David Platt. I'm trying to get through this book and I love it so far. It could be for the prompt a book that I own and have been excited for. It could also be used for the prompt about going on an adventure. This book is interesting in that I am reading it as a buddy read with my husband. And my husband loves to read. We especially love this genre, this nonfiction Christian genre, and we both really enjoy David Platt's writing style. However, we both have begun grad school. We are reading a lot, and my husband isn't quite reading for fun at the moment. So other than a Bible study, we have not been really involved in reading for fun. So I hope to finish this in May, but I think it will be finished in June instead. Speaking of grad school, I am enrolled in an English program, and one of the required courses is linguistics. So because most of my kind of free reading time has now been replaced with required reading, I am going to include this book in my list of books I read in May. And It sounds very silly, but because I've read it, I do want to include it. It's called Language Files. And if you're interested in linguistics, and it really is interesting, this book, they try super hard to be entertaining. The authors, the editors, they have done a really good job of being entertaining and saying funny things throughout the chapters. They throw in some humor, and that's something that I really enjoyed, especially for a required reading. Reading should be fun, but sometimes it just isn't. So anytime that we can make that required reading, or that reading that just really is not super fun, better, those are experiences that I really like to have while reading. For June, I'm focusing on free reading. Now, with that being said, I did come across a little challenge called the Rory Gilmore Reading Challenge. And what that is if you are a fan of Gilmore Girls, you know that Rory Gilmore loves to read. She is a complete bibliophile, and she is seen reading, I think, over 300 books in the series, and the book list is pretty good. So I will link that down below if you're interested in seeing all the books that she has read. Now, I really don't think I'm going to finish 300 books in June or 300 books in 2020. I actually know that I'm not going to be able to do that. So I just want to knock out a few of those books every month because I really enjoy Gilmore Girls. And I think this list is a great resource for people who love to read, because there were books on the list that I, of course, had heard about but haven't thought about in probably years, since maybe freshman year in college. And they're books that I would really like to read someday. So I'm going to begin with 2 this month. The first is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. And it's a book that I really can't believe I haven't read yet. I read quite a lot of Sylvia Plath. I was doing a research paper one time in undergrad, so I read a lot of her nonfiction stuff, and it was really good. And next I want to read The Bell Jar, so I hope to do that in June. Now, I already feel like I'm cheating a little bit because this is a play and not a book, but the second book that I'm going to be reading off of the Rory Gilmore reading list is Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw. Now, this is going to sound super nerdy, but the only time that I've truly been exposed to the story of Pygmalion would have been in the musical My Fair Lady and in the Disney movie Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen, where Lindsay Lohan's character is playing Eliza in Pygmalion. And I feel like I have such a shallow, superficial knowledge of this play, and I feel like if I'm going to be a fan of My Fair Lady, then I need to have read George Bernard Shaw's original version. So Pygmalion is going to be on my list for June. I have discovered a love of reading ARCs from NetGalley. I am so thankful that NetGalley allows me to read books that haven't been released yet. And one of the books that I hope to read in June is called When Life Gives You Mangoes. And a huge reason why I love to read these books that haven't been released quite yet is because it allows me to know books that I could recommend for my students when they become releases. And I have a lot of students who like to order their books on Amazon or read books on a Kindle or on their Chromebook. And this allows me to say, hey, this is going to be released and there's probably going to be a sale and you're going to love it. And I really think that's a great tool for teachers. So this book, I really have high hopes for. It is about a girl who loses her memory after a hurricane devastates her town. I think this could have such an interesting storyline that could be used in maybe even science class to talk about hurricanes and the devastation of hurricanes. It could be used maybe in history, talking about especially how islands are devastated and how their economies often take huge hits after a hurricane comes through. And obviously it will have great resources for English class as well. And that book is by Kereen Getten. One of the reasons that I'm excited for June is because my husband and I are going to the beach with family, and we have a fairly lengthy car ride ahead of us, and I would love to begin an audiobook. Now, I have not listened to an audiobook since college, and the only audiobooks that I've ever listened to are classics. I remember reading The Awakening by Kate Chopin and My Antonia by Willa Cather, I think. I think it's Willa Cather, on audiobook when I was commuting to school. And I really liked it. It wasn't super, even though the ones that I listened to were not super great quality. They were free on LibriVox, but they were good, and I learned a lot by listening to them. So I'm excited to listen to All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. And I have heard amazing things about this book. I haven't heard any negative things about this book, so I have really, really high hopes. I haven't done a lot of research into the plot. I don't know if it is going to be sad. I feel like it probably will be, so it might not be the best to listen to while we're at the beach, but I just have really great hopes for it, and I hope my husband likes it as well. So if you are like me on the beach, you love to have a book in your hand, and I do not trust taking a Kindle or an iPad or a computer to the beach. And digital books have been a really great thing for me since quarantine began, but I do prefer the actual physical copies of books. And I like reading happy things on the beach. I read Jane Eyre on the beach once, and I love Jane Eyre, but it was just a little too serious and a little too heavy for me to take to the beach. So I am going to scan the books that I have in my shelves here and see if I can find a lighthearted read to take to the beach. And that might be a book of just kind of general fiction, or it might be a book from my classroom. I have quite a few lighthearted ones that I took from my classroom to read over the summer, so I might do one or two of those. So I'm very excited for June. May sparked joy in reading, and I hope to continue that in June. And I'm really excited about the Rory Gilmore reading challenge. It will take me years to get through this thing, but I'm really excited for it, and I will link that down below. And I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please comment down below with your favorite book from May that you got to read and the book that you are most excited for in June. And I will catch you next time with some reviews, and hopefully you can use those if you're a teacher to help inform some recommendations that you can give to your students. And if you're not a teacher and just enjoy reading, I hope that the reviews or maybe videos like this can help you find some books that you enjoy. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in again, and have a wonderful day. Bye.